All right, guys, so this is a little different. It's different for me. It's probably a little different for Josh. Some of this is scripted. Toward the end, in scripted, I mean, we met for 15 minutes the other day just to kind of get an idea of what we were going to do from an outline standpoint. But then I made him promise that it was okay for me to bring up some things at the end, just kind of off the cuff, that I wanted him to deal with, and he said I could do that. So it's kind of like a test at the end. So that'll be something you can look forward to. But let's talk about testimony before we get started just a moment. We throw the word testimony out, and it means different things. And if I were to throw the word testimony out, a lot of us would go to something legal real quick. We would go to a courtroom where somebody is basically swearing they're going to tell the truth about something that they saw. And we're not going to make Josh raise his right hand and do that, but he is going to tell the truth about something he has seen that is personal for him. And so I'm looking forward to hearing this story. Some other things that come up, maybe more along the lines of spiritual testimony. It might be a conversion story, how you came to know Jesus. It might be in like a personal journey, a trip that you're taking, in this case with the Lord. It might be about how God showed up and made himself really, really plain. It may be about a personal relationship with Jesus. It might be an answered prayer or a victory over sin, a lesson that God has taught. All of those things can work into a testimony. Ben, if you'll put up the scripture, I want us to read a scripture real quick, and then we'll get into this. So here's an amazing story, and it contains a testimony from Luke 8:30 through 39. Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, for he was filled with many demons. The demons kept begging Jesus not to send them into the bottomless pit. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby, and the demons begged him to let them enter into the pigs. So Jesus gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned. When the herdsmen saw it, they fled to the nearby town and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been freed from the demons. He was sitting at Jesus' feet, fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others how the demon-possessed man had been healed. And all the people in the region of the Gerasenes begged Jesus to go away and leave them alone, for a great wave of fear swept over them. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. The man who had been freed from the demons begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him home saying, "No, go back to your family and tell them everything God has done for you." So he went all through the town, proclaiming the great things Jesus had done for him. That is a beautiful testimony. And two words from that scripture, two really short words that I want you to recognize are the words Go and tell. And so today, Josh has come out, he's going, and he's going to tell. And that's why we're here today. So, brother, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, tell us about when you first came to know Jesus and what that was like.
First of all, you already teaching. Yeah, you already teaching. So the first thought that comes to my mind is New Zion Baptist Church. New Zion Baptist Church. And New Zion Baptist Church is the church that I grew up in. And it's a small family church on, let's see,
605 Dan Crutcher Road.
605 Dan Crutcher Road. So everybody for the people who weren't able to say that and the people who were able to say that, let me tell you why the people who were able to say that were able to say that. They were able to say that because this is some of my family that has came here today. So let's give them a hand for being here. So my dad, my mom, my Aunt Pocky, my grandmother, my Uncle Chauncey, Aunt Liz, Jensen, Jordan, Squeaker, Charles. So this is some of my family that came to support me. And so I grew up in that church. And the pastor of that church at the time when I was attending, his name was John W. Humphrey. So I'm sorry if I might be a little bit of Baptist up here a little bit. I know this may be a Church of Christ, but I might get a little Baptist. But so I always had the opportunity to be around the Father and His love because my parents, they facilitated that environment for me. And going to New Zion, they facilitated that environment for me. And so I think I was around like 6, Lynn, when I decided to get baptized. And then after that, you know, it was like how you just described, it was a journey. Do you want me to stop there or you want me to keep going? You got it? Okay, so New Zion Baptist Church comes to my mind, and when I was 6 is when I decided to get baptized. And when I made that decision, I think I had a conversation with the little girl yesterday. Not yesterday, but I think it was Friday after one of our games. And she came up to me and she said, "I'm a Christian now." And she was so happy. And you could tell that she was young. She probably was around that age of 6 or 7. But the first thing that came to my mind was, this is the best decision that you've ever made in your life. And I knew that, but I needed to grow into that. And oftentimes there are a lot of things that we know here, but we don't necessarily know it here. You know, Coach Berryman is here. TB is what we call him. How many times, Coach Berryman, do you feel like the players know it here, but then when the game gets to going, it's like, what happened? I thought you knew it, but it's because sometimes in order for us to actually do something as if it's natural, we can't just know it here, we have to know it in our hearts. And so when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis. And my middle name is Labyron, L-A-B-Y-R-O-N. That's how you spell my middle name, Lynn. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm including Lynn in case you got any questions. If you hear anything.
Keep rolling, bro.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Yeah, so when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis, and meningitis is, I'm not going to be able to give you the scientific explanation of that, but what I do know is that there was a very challenging time in my life because I almost lost my life. And at that time, my father, he was in Iraq, and so that was also a challenge for me in that particular moment, because my dad has always been he's always been a man that we could always rely on. So I had my father who had decided to take this opportunity, which was a good opportunity, and he was taking the opportunity, I believe, so that he could better our family, put our family in even a better position than where we were in. And so I had this thing with my father where, you know, he had left, and then meningitis comes in, and it's like a double whammy for me. And so at 12 years old, I mean, that's a very pivotal age in a person's life. I mean, biblically, you look at how Jesus, when he was 12, he was in the temple. So I think the scriptures even teach us about, there's something significant about that number 12, right? And so, or that age 12. And so, when I went through that, I mean, it was challenging. And I wanted to maybe do something impromptu. If you aren't comfortable with this, just say, I'll pass. But would anybody from my family like to share maybe some thoughts on what that was like when they saw me going through meningitis? Anybody want to just share an emotion or a feeling?
For me, it was scary. It was scary because I had experienced it before. Because my son had meningitis.
Okay.
Of course, you don't get to this, but my nephew had meningitis. My nephew, and it was just scary.
Yeah.
Because it's serious. It is very serious.
This is my aunt. My aunt Pop. Grandma, you want to say anything?
That time was a very hard time for me. Josh is my oldest grandson. His nickname is that he's the love of my life. When Josh come along, it meant so much to me in several ways, because that meant that I would live on the next generation. I'm a mother of 4 children. I have 2 sons, 2 daughters. But when my grandson came, it was just a whole brand new world. I had children of my own. I had saw other people have children. But when my grandson was born, I liked their fame. And I've never experienced that before until when I saw his head. I knew that I was going to live forever in another generation. And it just hit my heart. But I thank God that God is a God that you can serve when it's good and when it's bad. Amen. And so I have that type of relationship. I used to have a zeal of God, but now I've come to the true knowledge of what an awesome God we serve. So whatever you need, all you have to do is go to God and ask Him. Amen. Yeah. When they diagnosed that Josh had meningitis, then I just went to him. I said, God, that's my only grant. Would you please save him? And in my heart, I knew that He would do that, because meningitis had robbed our family of one life, or whatever you stand in need of. Doubt nothing. Have faith. God is still the same today as He was yesterday. Josh is still here.
Grandma, do you want my chair?
See, that's the other preacher in the family.
Yes.
I'm sure all of my other family members could share as well. But when my grandmother said she felt like meningitis had robbed our family before, I'm gonna give you context of what she's talking about. Well, remember when I just said my middle name is LaByron, and then I said Lynn?
L-A-B-Y-R-O-N.
L-A-B-Y-R-O-N. Okay, so I had a cousin whom I've never met. Him and my father was actually close friends. They were also cousins, but they were close friends as well as I think my Uncle Chauncey. I think all of them was really close, just from what I know. But he passed away from meningitis when he was 19 years old. And so my family, when they seen this come back into the family, I'm sure it was something that really was a shocker and a rocker for them, because they had already lost somebody from this. And I think that was part of the reasons why the doctors went out to test me for meningitis, was because they were already saying that, hey, you should test my grandmother and my aunts. They were telling him, hey, you might test him for meningitis. And they were actually not going to, or at least they were hesitant to do it, because it was one thing that they were asking me to do. They were like, can you move your head back and forth like this? Do you remember that, Mom? It was like, can you move your head back and forth like this? And I could do it without pain. And so they felt like, well, if he could do that, then that means that he probably doesn't have meningitis. But I had to get a spinal tap. And Uncle Chauncey, do you remember that? Yeah, so I had to get a spinal tap. And does anybody know what a spinal tap is? Okay. And so I had to get a spinal tap. And basically what it is, in layman terms, I got something drew out of my back with a needle. And that was probably one of the most, up until that point, that was probably the most physically discomforting things that I'd ever experienced in my life. And then what I remember is my Uncle Chauncey, him being right there beside me and holding my hand, because they were like, listen, you cannot move. We want you to be very still. And so he was holding my hand, he was squeezing my hand. And he was just there for me. And so I was able to get through that. But I remember him just holding my hand really tight. And so I'm just trying to give you context for just the whole situation. Do you feel like you're there with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then I remember talking to my father, because he was in Iraq, and I wasn't really able to get much communication with him because, just the communication from there to here is just choppy. And I just remember him saying something around the lines of just stay mentally strong. Stay mentally strong. And that was like the only, I think me and my dad probably had one phone call maybe, and that was it. And then I remember my mom, she was there the whole time. And my mom, being the prayer warrior that she is, I think she really doesn't know how much the prayers and even the acts that she stepped into by praying was sowing seeds into my life to help me be more prepared for situations like this. And so I remember, I don't know if my mom remembers this, but I remember asking my mom, was I going to die? When I was 12 years old. I just remember asking her that. I don't know if she does, but for some reason I remember asking that. And that was one of the first times, outside of feeling like the Lord was drawing me to him when I got baptized at 6, or second time. It was the second time where I felt like the Father spoke to my heart. And it wasn't like a loud voice, but it was just like a still small voice, Major. It was just like a still small voice. I just want to call your name. You make me smile when I see you, so I just... it was like a still small voice, and I just remember the feeling in my heart, the Lord saying that I wasn't going to die. That it was just more for my life. I'll stop there if you got any questions.
Just move us through. Take us through high school and ball and to Michigan State.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, after I got out of the hospital, I think I was in the hospital for about a week, and it was like I was never sick. My dad came back and he was like, "Are you standing on something?" I grew. By the time he got back, I was taller. And even that, because that was around like 6th grade, so that following year, or the year going into the school year that I was getting ready to go into was my 7th grade year. And that was a year that I was going to get a chance to play middle school basketball. And I was just so excited for that. I'd already been playing basketball before this point. I'd already been playing basketball up until this point. But I remember, like, I was so excited to play middle school basketball at Riverton Middle School. And I remember dressing up, I think it was the night before my game. I remember putting on my jersey. I think some guys up here, y'all may feel what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. I remember putting my jersey on, my full jersey, the team shoes and everything. The game isn't until tomorrow. I put my jersey on, I put the shoes on, I was playing with my socks. I was just so excited to get a chance to be able to play. And I played that year, and it was like I never was sick. It was like I never just, it's just like I never had went through what I had went through. It was just like, it just wasn't there. And so that year was a really good year for me. And then that's when after that year, I was thinking about going to a different school, like pursuing a different school. And then that's when Madison Academy came into picture. So I didn't come to Madison Academy until I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old. And so I paused right there, and I want to say I have some people from Madison Academy here, and I want to acknowledge them as well. I appreciate you guys for coming and worship with us today. So if you could just give them a hand. We got the JV boys team, the freshman team too, and then the varsity team. And so I came to Madison Academy, and I actually got put back a grade. So I was supposed to be in 8th grade when I got here, but I got put back a grade.
I wonder why.
It wasn't because I wasn't intelligent. But I remember coming to Madison Academy, I got put back a grade. And I remember Coach Privet is what I would call him then. Now I call him Brian, but it's a little uncomfortable because I'm so used to calling him Coach Privet. But Coach Privet, I remember Coach Privet's Bible class. So I think I had Coach Privet my first year at Madison Academy. And it's crazy because probably the 2nd or 3rd week, I was just telling Charson about this. And I was telling Charson's class about this that I teach here at Madison Academy. I think it was maybe the 2nd or 3rd week. And I don't know if Brian remembers this, but I almost got into a fight with Cole Thomason. And he's standing right behind me on the wall. And I felt like he had said something to me that was out of line, but also at the same time, I think what I was wrestling with at that time was identity. You know, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? Because at this time, I think it's very important from, you know, the time you're born, really your whole life, but I really think it's very important that from the time that you're born to that 14, that 12, 13, 14 years of age, it's really important that you grasp who God has created you to be. And you really gather that. And I think for some reason, it just wasn't clicking in my head. It wasn't like my parents, they did the best that they could do. But for some reason, it just wasn't clicking in my head. And so when I got into it with Cole Thomason, I don't think it was really anything about Cole Thomason as much as it was about me not feeling secure in who I was at that time in my life. And now, you know, just want to fast forward. I don't want to leave any room for any imaginations in here. Cole Thomason and I, we were great. You know, later on in high school, we became the best of friends in terms of how we connected with each other. But, so, Brian Privet's Bible class. And that's when more seeds were sown into me of the kingdom. And so I'm still on this journey. So I remember at 6, I'm still on this journey, and I'm still walking this thing out. And I remember I was thinking about, just reflecting on, my time and my testimony that was developed, my time here at Madison Academy. And I remember going to an FCA camp at UAH. Brian, do you remember that? Remember that camp that, I think it was me, Quan Cawthorn, and maybe a few other basketball guys. And I just remember going to that camp, and similar to, what Joanna was just sharing before we started the service today, I just remember discovering, I guess, more of how valuable I was to God. And I just broke down. Like, I just remember I think I was like 15, and I just broke down, and I just was crying profusely. Like, I just could not stop crying. And so around that time was when I also decided to start speaking at my church. And when I started speaking at my church, I just remember going up in front of the church. I think I was around like 15 or 16. I remember going up in front of the church, and I remember telling the church that I feel like God wants me to start speaking, to start communicating about what He's done for me in my life. And I think at that time, what I was really trying to figure out, Lynn, was still how valuable am I to God? And so I kept searching. I kept doing things that I felt like was good to Him or good for Him. And so I want to fast forward to when I was at Michigan State. And if you want me to rewind back, just rewind me back.
Go right in.
Okay, but I want to fast forward to when I was at Michigan State. And my junior year of college. Now, my junior year of college, this was the year where I actually felt like I was going to get a chance to be able to go play professional basketball. Like, after this year, I really felt like if I continuously do well this year, then the NBA is actually going to be I'm going to be able to grasp this. And up until this point, I chose to go to Michigan State because I felt like that was, the best decision for me at that time. And it was so much fanfare around me and then four other guys coming into Michigan State. And then my freshman year, it was almost like it was it was almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody help me. What's the word I'm looking for? Huh? No, we didn't dominate. What would be the opposite of dominate?
Got your tail kicked.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to think of a more philosophical word. I think that's what happened. There we go, Dad. My dad said underachieved. We really underachieved that year, my freshman year. And then I felt like I underachieved as a person. Because I had all these expectations on me, and maybe, I don't know whether they were external or internal. I just felt expectations, and I felt pressure to meet up and to reach up to these expectations, right? And when I didn't do that, it's almost like I took on that failure. Failure became my identity. So they talk about, you have guilt. Guilt says I did something bad. And then shame says I am bad. So like when they talk about that in principle, what it means is if you're living in that place of shame, that means you're taking on the identity of whatever it is that has taken place in your life that you feel like shouldn't have taken place. Does that make sense? So I didn't just say I failed. I actually became a failure in my mind, JC and Tate. Like I walked around as if failure was who I was. And so I carried that with me all the way up to my junior year. And so when I skipped my sophomore year, but I'm going to so when I got to my junior year, just want you to keep that in mind that this is the identity that I'm walking in. And so I get to my junior year and things are going well for me. I'm producing, and yet I'm still operating in this identity. And so like just to pause right there is very important, I think, to understand that sometimes we can have results that look good outwardly, but just because those results look good outwardly, it doesn't mean that we're operating in the right identity. So success isn't always a byproduct of having the right heart posture and really knowing who you are as a person. Because it's better to know who you are as a person than it is to be successful in society standards. So the true success is discovering who you are and actually grabbing a hold of that. So my junior year, I'm operating in this mindset. And then I'm 12 games into the season and I get injured and my season is cut short. But up until this point, I'm like, yo, this is the year for me. You know, I'm getting busy, Charleston, like, and it's not, and I feel like I had more in me, but I was actually playing at least to where I felt like, okay, yes, I'm able to achieve my dream. And then I get injured. And it's like somebody said, I'm gonna give you $1 million, I'm gonna let you touch it, and then I'm just gonna take it back from you, Bryce. I guess that's the best example. I'm sharing this as I see it, so I guess that's the best example that I could give you, where it's like somebody gave me something that was very valuable, and then they took it from me and didn't tell me when I was gonna get a chance to get it back. And so I ended up having to have surgery, and that surgery was very challenging for me because before I had actually had the surgery, Lynn, I had to walk around in a boot, and they wanted to see whether or not I would be able to play, like if it was just something that I just needed rest, and they found out that it wasn't something that just needed rest. And so I got the surgery. And so when I got the surgery, it was like, you know, okay, I've been through some injuries, maybe I can get through this. And I'm still trying to be a part of the team. I'm still coming to workouts. I'm still, you know, trying to do everything that I can. And I'm working on trying to get back. And I actually get a chance to get back into practice after I work through my recovery process. And once I get back, my foot is bothering me again. And I'm like, what is going on? And so we go through that whole MRI process and things of that nature. And they tell me that my foot is fractured again, the same foot, just in a different place. And so now, not only am I still operating in this mindset of I am a failure, now I'm in this place of I have no hope. Like I'm hopeless. And the reason why I'm hopeless is because at least I felt like I was going to get a chance to get back to this place. But now you're telling me that I can't get back to this place? What do you mean? Like, in my mind, because I'm somewhat of a logical thinker, I'm like, okay, well, I did the rehab. You know, I did what I was supposed to do. Why are you saying that this is happening again? It just doesn't make sense to me. And then that's when I would say, I wasn't clinically diagnosed with depression, but I would say that was a seasonal depressed state for me. Like I went through I heard maybe some people call seasonal depression, where it's like, you aren't necessarily clinically diagnosed, but you have like these weights on your shoulders, and you walk around with like a cloud, And so just picture me still being in this mindset of I am a failure because I got to Michigan State and things haven't happened the way that they were supposed to happen. And now I have this cloud over me where it's like there's no sun, there's no hope. You know, it's like the song we sang today. It's talking about like the dawn of the day. Like there's none of that. There's no light anywhere for me. And I just mentally, I just almost just swam down and just gave up on my life. Like I remember questioning whether or not I should continue to live, because I'm just like, okay, well, what am I living for? Now, mind you, that at 6, I had given my life to the Lord. I had started speaking at church. I had been doing these Christian events and things of that nature. I've been doing all of these things that, on the outside looking in, you would think that, hey, somebody that is speaking about the goodness of God, and somebody that is going to these different events and things like that, like you would just think that, okay, Josh, I mean, I remember saying in interviews like, hey, you know, I believe God got a plan. Like I remember saying it. I remember talking about those things. But inwardly, I was depressed. I didn't feel like I had any hope. I remember I went on like a 21-day fast. I didn't eat any food. I just drank water. And I think I lost maybe like, what did you say? I lost too much weight. I probably was like, just give you context. I'm probably around like 193, 194 right now. I was around like 150. And I was trying to go on that fast, but what I didn't know was that, like, I was depressed. I was losing hope for life. Like, life just wasn't that important for me anymore, because what I felt like was going to happen didn't happen for me. Right? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
You guys still with me? Am I talking too much? Is the food here yet? Okay. You guys are still smiling, so I think you guys are still here with me. You here with me, Major? So good to see you, my friend. Cole, you good? Okay, it's good to see you. Okay, so now I'm walking as a failure. This is my identity. Failure is like my name. No longer do I see myself as Joshua. In my mind, I'm seeing myself as failure. And I'm feeling depressed about life, as if there's no more hope for me. And then, what happened for me, Lynn, and everybody in here, and what's happening for me every day, like this is a continual process for me. What happened for me was that I met someone at this time. His name was Mark Baldwin. And Mark is a pastor at this church called Advancing God's Kingdom Ministries in East Lansing, Michigan. And what Mark introduced me to was this idea of God as Father. He introduced me to this idea of God as Father. Now, up until this point, I had heard that, but I hadn't really heard it. It hadn't really clicked on the inside of me. And so he like encouraged me to go down this journey of what it meant to explore God as Father. And Lynn, what is still my testimony today, like I'm still walking this thing out, where I'm discovering that His love, the love that the Father has for me, it isn't about what I do. So we live and I played in a culture when it comes to sports. I played in a culture that you got accolades for what you did and not necessarily for who you are. And so when the reason why failure was beginning to be because I was identifying as a failure. I wasn't just saying I failed. I was identifying as a failure. Because I was identifying as a failure, or I was identifying as a failure because I felt like what I did wasn't good enough. And so I was basing who I really was off of what I did. And so the whole premise for my life and what I needed to do for God was that I needed to do something for God. And I felt like in order for me to actually be seen by him, I needed to do something for him. But what helped me get out of that place of identifying as a failure and living as if there was no hope for me was realizing that even if I never do if I just sit here for the rest of my life and everybody leaves and you guys go on with your day, you go back to work, you go with your house, and if I just stay here, God's love for me, it just won't change. Like, I can't do more for him to love me because his love just is. In 1 John it says, God is love. So that means that he can't do anything but do that towards you. And what I realized was that my identity didn't have to be in the mistakes that I made and in the things that I didn't do, but it just had to be in just being loved. Because we live in a very performance-based society. So performance can become what we chase after, and then when we don't perform, we feel like we aren't good enough. We feel like we don't have any value. And so what I realized was that my value isn't found in what I do. My value is found in just who I am. And then out of that understanding, I can be a good son to my father. I can be a good son to my mother. I can be a good cousin. I can be a good coach at Madison Academy. I can be a good teacher. I can be a good Bible teacher. I can be everything that God has called me to be, because performance isn't the foundation for what I'm doing. Because if I'm making my life based upon whether or not I do enough, then at some point I'm going to fall back because I never can do enough. But he is enough. And so because he is enough, it gave me so much more freedom. And it's something that I'm still walking out to this day. But what I've learned, Lynn, is that by just being myself, that I'm loved. And that I can like me. Like I'm good enough.
Talk a little bit, Josh, about finishing up at Michigan State and the path back here. What did that look like? What was that?
Yeah. So it was a crazy path. It wasn't a crazy path, but it was a very unique path because one day I just felt like Madison Academy was, I just felt like God was putting Madison Academy back in my heart. And I like to write stuff down. I like to jot things down. And so I just felt like one day God wanted me to write down what he was saying to me about Madison Academy. I just felt like he wanted me to come back to Madison Academy. And so a week before that, or a week after that, I actually ended up getting a text from Tom. And Tom was like, hey, I can't remember what he said, but he was just like, hey, would you ever consider coming back home? You know, would you consider coming to Madison Academy? And I was like shocked, because literally prior to that text that I got, I feel like God sent me a text.
Right.
And he was like, hey, you know, I want you to come back here.
Right.
And so I texted him, I think, I don't know, maybe right when he texted, I don't know, but I said yes. And then I think maybe he called me, but I just know that we started having conversations. I started talking to Brian and Tom about what that would look like, and then it just happened. Yeah, it just happened. But I think that speaks to how God, if we open up our hearts to Him, you know, His love will guide us.
Yeah. So, you ready for your pop test?
Okay.
Some questions? Anybody have just a burning question? Anybody? Yes.
Hey, Coach.
Hey.
You're not too, and I say this quite a few times, you're not too far removed from those guys sitting right there in the stands in reality. Can you share just a little bit about the journey of the athletics, the academic, and the spiritual commitment and dedication, all the hard work you put in over that 5 years of going from the 5'10", 8th grader to the All-American superstar?
Are you saying, do you want me to share my story?
Sure.
Okay.
Without that, just briefly.
Okay. Well.
Just do that MA, that MA time.
Yeah. Are you saying you want me to share with them what it takes?
Yeah.
Or, okay, what it takes. Okay. I just want to be clear, because I don't want to, I like clear communication. Thanks for asking the question, though. Well, I think it first begins with, I think, one, realizing what I just said about realizing that who you are is good enough. So if you know that you're good enough before you get out onto the basketball court, before you step into an academic space, before you decide what college you need to go to, if you know that God made you good enough by just being good, by just who you are, it takes the pressure off of you to try to perform and meet a standard or an expectation that it may not even be there. And to be honest with you, I think I was really successful in the game of basketball, I believe. But I think I would have had so much more freedom when I was on the court